morning, everyone. Again, thank you so much for kicking off your Friday morning with us. This is an overview session for ARC 3.0. This is in partnership with the Forbes Funds, Place to Soar, the Care-Based Leadership, and then the Rivka Associates. So the ARC 3.0 is the third iteration of the cohort, and it's a unique transformative opportunity to engage in meaningful discussions, deepen our understanding of racial justice, and take concrete actions to dismantle systemic racism. Apologies. Our core leaders for the cohort are Anita Russell, the founder and CEO of the Place to Soar, Jessica Spradley, the president and co-founder of Care-Based Leadership, Rebecca Gilmer, and Hannah Karolak, who are unfortunately not able to be with us this morning due to some sickness going around. But Rebecca is a nonprofit professional from Rivka Associates, and Dr. Hannah Karolak is from the Forbes Funds team. She's the chief program officer for the Forbes Funds. Apologies. In this cohort, we'll come together to explore critical issues that reflect on our roles in building a more inclusive community and support each in commitment to personal collective growth. So whether the cohort's designed, whether you're just kind of starting out this journey or you're looking to expand your knowledge on being anti-racist and kind of what that means, this cohort is designed to be a supportive space for everyone, all inclusive. And if there are any questions, please feel free to come off mute and jump in, or happy to follow up in the chat with folks as questions come in. So whatever makes folks most comfortable. The curriculum schedule is broken down into 3 parts. There are incubator sessions, data sessions, and then reading discussion series. The sessions will be held weekly on Fridays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Over the course of 20 weeks. And the cohort will take place in a hybrid space. So most sessions will be held here virtually on Zoom, but there will be some in-person opportunities as we go along the cohort as well. And this is kind of the curriculum schedule parsed out over the 20 weeks, rotating between the reading discussion series, the incubator sessions, and then the data series. And then the incubator sessions, Anita will be in charge of. The data series sessions will be from Jessica, and then the reading discussions will be Rebecca Gilmer. And once the cohort is complete, there will be a graduation ceremony, and graduates will also receive a badge and a certification of completion for the cohort to showcase a commitment to DEI training and optimizing core practices into human-centered design experiences that aid in systemically shifting organizational cultures. And then a breakdown of the cohort pricing, $3,000 to $10,000, depending on if you're an individual to a large-scale organization. There's also a discount if you're a small-scale GPNP member. If there are any questions around what size my organization is categorized, or if I am a current GPMP member, please feel free to reach out. I'm definitely happy to circle back and answer those questions. And then if there are any questions, please feel free to come off mute as we go through this. That was just kind of a quick overview of some frequently asked questions we've been getting about the cohort. So like the curriculum structure, the pricing breakdown, kind of the flow and curriculum schedule and time commitment for ARC. But with that, I will kick things over to Anita and Jessica, who will go into a little more detail around the incubator sessions and the data series. So Anita.
Thank you so much, Bree, for getting us started and sort of priming our audience to have a little bit of background information on what this program is all about. So my name is Anita Russell, and I am the founder and CEO of a social enterprise called The Place to Soar. And fundamentally, my business, or my purpose, if you will, is about cultivating change from the inside out. So I look at that through a coaching lens. I look at it through a personal transformation lens. And I'm going to excuse myself because I have a cough drop in my mouth and it's causing me problems. So I'm going to take it out. Messing up my rhythm a little bit. So please excuse me if I do cough. I'm just kind of getting over a bout of bronchitis. So again, that personal transformation, that coaching aspect and everything. And this program that I created, the Anti-Racism Incubator, actually evolved out of my own George Floyd origin story, which started off with a very personal question regarding my grandson and whether or not he was going to have to fight and protest for his right to exist in the skin in which he was born. And so out of that flowed a number of things, and this incubator experience is one of them. So I'll just walk you briefly through what the experience is designed to do. And so what it does is it's intended to deliver an experience that prepares you as a participant, as a cohort member, for critical self-reflection, to get a deeper understanding of your own thoughts, beliefs, and ideas about racism as a member of a racialized society. So it's really kind of taking that very personal lens into who I am, what do I think, what do I believe, what are some of the ideas that I have when I think about the whole concept of racism. At the same time, it's about equipping you with a greater awareness of what also emerges in your words, your actions, and your behavior. So when I talk about cultivating change from the inside out, these are the types of things that I'm talking about, that critical self-reflection, and also building up that awareness. So the things that I do have in my mind, my ideas, and all of that, how is that showing up for me in the world, in the words that I speak, the actions that I take, and the behaviors? And I'm talking about these things in a very broad context in terms of in your home, your workplace, and in your community. And then finally, it's about providing you with a personal transformation strategy towards anti-racism activation in your personal life, but as well as your organization and even in your community. So this journey was intended for those individuals who desire a deeper understanding of themselves, an understanding of how to best connect with other people, and cultivating change under systemic and institutionalized racism, historical inequities, and things of that nature. So it's appropriate, as Bree mentioned, for individuals, organizations, businesses, intact teams. The whole entire point is to bring folks together to engage in this activity. So there's three central questions that are associated with the incubator. And the first one is, what if we collectively were to seek to impact social change through the art of deep conversation, personal transformation, and accountability? So again, it's bringing it down to that individual level and how that individual can then influence in their organization or influence in their community. And the second question is, what could the future look like in terms of social, health, education, economic equity, if we were to take on that transformation at that individual level? And then finally, how will you contribute? And so that's a big question right there, is how will you contribute? And then it's also built on, I'm sort of giving you the framework at this point in terms of the incubator. So there's 5 tenets of change that are based on these 3 central questions that I just posed: courage, conversation, relationship, accountability, and impact. And then we have several content areas that are designed for active learning, right? And so critical self-reflection, as I mentioned, increased literacy through ethnography, history, racial, visual, literature, art, all of these things that we can look at to increase our literacy when it comes to racism, anti-racism, and how to activate something different. And then it also applies to social determinants of health. What are those benefits when you think about social determinant of health and how racism is a disruptor of health and wellness? And then your mindset. Do you have a fixed mindset, a growth mindset, or a benefit mindset? So my intention is to move people into this space of having that benefit mindset. And then we talk a lot about psychological safety, generational leadership. I take an appreciative coaching approach. And so I just wanted to kind of, again, give you that framework that is there. And that framework is designed to be disruptive. So it's designed to put individuals in, I want to say sometimes in a space of being uncomfortable, because the reality is having these conversations is very uncomfortable. But at the same time, these conversations need to be had. And so one of the things that I encourage people to do is kind of move through and manage the discomfort so that you could get something out of the work that you are engaging in. And so I also want to kind of think about and let you know some of the resources, if you will, that I use throughout the program. So it's taken me a while to kind of pull the appropriate resources together that really fit within the framework that I had designed. And so I'll just walk you through some of those program development resources that you will be exposed to as we go through the program. And the first is a book that I authored myself. It's called Cultivating Change from the Inside Out, The Power of Being Human. And it really presents my SOAR personal transformation model, which is really connected to having those real life application, recognizing that daily growth is personal, it's unique, and it's self-driven, and that growth and transformation reflect those inner experiences that are manifested outward. Then there's a commitment to continuous improvement. That's like a big thing for me as a life coach, is this idea of continuous improvement, that the more you learn about yourself and the more you know how you impact and how you interact with those people around you, it becomes an iterative process of discovery and dreaming, designing, destiny, delivery, and innovating, so that you become a different person, so that you can interact in a different kind of way in the circles in which you move. And then finally, sort of going through this process of regularly auditing your life. So I look at anti-racism activation not as a point, but as a series. It's a growth over the course of time. And so the more you get into the conversation, the more you get into the ideas behind anti-racism and the role that you personally can play in this resistance towards racism is very, very powerful. The second book that I use sort of foundationally is a book by Robert Livingston, who is a Harvard sociology professor. And he wrote a book called The Conversation: How Seeking and Speaking Truth About Racism Can Radically Transform Individuals and Organizations. And one of the things that I like about this book is how he presents something that he describes as the PRESS model. So PRESS is actually an acronym, so I'll kind of walk you through what those components are. First, there's problem analysis and root cause analysis. And really what you're, in those two pieces of it, you're sort of embarking on this journey of answering the question, do you understand the problem? And do you understand the problem in the fullness of the problem, right? And what that means is the fullness of the problem is, how does it impact somebody such as myself, or somebody perhaps such as yourself, in your everyday reality, your everyday story, as you're moving through the world and dealing with some of the racialized context in which we find ourselves. And then there's also the empathy piece, and that's associated with concern. So having gotten to the point where understanding the problem, do you actually care about the problem and the people that it harms? So that's where the empathy piece comes in. And then for the strategy and the sacrifice, it's about, are you willing to take the steps to engage in correcting the problem? Are you willing to take the action to solve the problem? So that's sort of what Robert Livingston's PRESS model is all about. And again, it's pretty fundamental into the way that I develop the whole entire incubator. So then we have another source that I use is from the Center for Creative Leadership. So I happen to be an on-call facilitator for the Center for Creative Leadership. And one of the programs that they deliver is a program called Better Conversations Every Day. And embedded in that is this whole model that they describe as the LACE model. And LACE, again, is an acronym. It's for learning how to listen intentionally for the purpose of understanding. And so being able to be that listener is very critical to moving through this journey of anti-racism. And then it's also asking very powerful questions, not powerful questions to challenge, but more powerful questions to clarify your own understanding. So remember, this is about your journey. It's about your transformation and you having that ability to ask those powerful questions or to engage in those powerful questions, again, for the purpose of clarifying and deepening your own understanding. And then it's also moving in that space to discover new possibilities. So it's going beyond the limits of the current thinking. What do I currently think about it? What does society currently think about it? And moving into a place of discovering new possibilities to be able to move us forward, to literally impact social change. And then finally, the E stands for establishing accountability. And that's about action and it's about collaboration. And so what are we going to do as a result of going through this particular journey? And then another resource that I use with the Center for Creative Leadership is the REAL framework. And REAL, again, is an acronym. And the acronym stands for Reveal Relevant Activities, and that's about discovery and analysis. The E stands for Elevate Equity, and understanding that without equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts can be unsustainable, right? And so then the A stands for Activate Diversity, and that's recognizing and engaging and appreciating difference and using those difference to enhance collaboration, right? And then the L is for leading inclusively. That's actively and ongoing intentional efforts to promote participation and belonging. And so I just wanted to kind of give you a sense of what the program is intended to be, why I designed it the way that I did. And then finally, I will leave you with these 5 activate engagement. And so part of what I'm doing is activating that engagement for you as a participant. And so there are 5 break your brain struggles that you might experience, right? The first one being realizing that I don't know what I don't know about racism. So the whole idea is opening up your own awareness, your own understanding, your own knowledge, and broadening them. And so that boils down to you may come to see that there's a lot that you don't actually know, right? So that's, keep that in mind. And then there's also discovering that, so this is kind of taking us back to the election of Barack Obama. And so it's discovering that the election of Barack Obama as president did not necessarily signify that we had moved into a post-racial combined society. So if you look at the historical events that have happened since Barack Obama's presidency, you can see that we did not get into that place of being a post-racial society, okay? And then finally, I shouldn't say finally, this is the third one, I should say, feeling uncomfortable about talking about race and racism. You will feel uncomfortable, but that uncomfort is part of the battle. It's part of the resistance, okay? And then comprehending how history, education, and socialization are tied to things like white supremacy or Christian nationalism. So it's kind of digging into those pieces of it as well. And then now finally, harmonizing historical truth with generations of lived experiences. So there's a lot in what we'll talk about, people's experiences. What are their personal narratives? How did I personally experience racism in my own life? And you being challenged to open yourself up to be able to receive that and to hear that. So I know this was a lot, and I just wanted to kind of give you some of the background information on the incubator process. And so I'm here for any questions, any clarification that you have. So at this point, I'll pass the, if there are no questions at this point, I'll pass the baton over to Jessica.
There was a question that came in the chat. Are the incubator sessions curated towards the larger group or on a more individualized approach?
It's both, actually. And so at the core of it is the individual. And so the way I think about this whole entire process is about me impacting the individual and then arming that individual with the tools and the resources that they need to now go out and impact, for example, your team in your organization, right? And then having that influence within an organization enables you to then impact what is happening in the broader context. It might be in your own community or other organizations that you may be a part of. So I look at the individual as the core of all of that. And then all of these other things can grow out of the fact that we have been able to move you into a space of an anti-racist activist, if you will.
I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, Anita, so I think we're good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. I always love hearing you talk about the incubator. So if you have questions, please, as they come up, put them in the chat. My name's Dr. Jessica Merritt. I am the co-founder and current president of the Care-Based Leadership Collaborative. We're a full-service diversity, equity, and inclusion training and consulting firm. And one of the things that I love about ARC is that I get to kind of just be in my jam. Although I love talking and presenting, I secretly am a data nerd. So I love numbers. I love making up stories, looking at what they tell us, how we can track and measure change. And that's exactly what we get to do in ARC. So essentially, I do three things. I work with everyone to one, understand data, two, use data, and three, understand how to track progress. So first, when we're talking about understanding data, we do it from three perspectives. The first is a theoretical framework. So we look through frameworks of understanding what data means, I would say classical and contemporary ways of understanding data, utilizing data and understanding what's appropriate. Qualitative data, which is stories and words, or quantitative data, which is the actual numbers, or sometimes it's a mix of both, and you use some sort of mixed methods depending on what you're going to use the data for. Then we move into looking at actually using the data. So how are we going to use it? Are we going to use it for annual reports? Are we using it for tracking progress? Is it going to be utilized for grant writing, different assessment strategies? One of the most common things, especially nonprofits use data for, is justification for spending, for programming, resource allocation, etc. When we look at data from an anti-racist perspective, a lot of times people focus on numbers of diversity within employment, within hiring applications, but there's so much more that you can utilize data for to analyze and track culture, to understand the actual experience. And so we explore a lot of those things within ARC. The last thing that we do is we understand how to track progress. We're looking at inclusion numbers. We're looking at the way that people are feeling about the culture. We're looking at the actual experience, not just from an employee perspective, but from a participant perspective. So the way that we're looking at data, one is individually, right? How can you utilize data on an everyday basis? But second, from an organizational perspective, do we need to collect new data? How is the data that we are collecting useful? Does there need to be any expansion? And so we look at it from an organizational perspective, but you'll also get to have individual meetings with me so we can talk more specifically about your organization, what you're going through, what you're trying to achieve, and how you can influence those metrics with data. So that was a quick rundown, but essentially we'll look at everything together and we'll look at things individually on a one-on-one basis too.
Question that was shared with me in the chat that said, with the data collection, will there be any dashboards to help share the results with my organization?
So the data collection is so the first answer is no, because we're not actually doing data collection for your organization within ARC. Can we do that outside of ARC? Absolutely. And we can work on looking at exactly what you need. I can give you, let me open up a I'm going to open up a sample dashboard, and this can be something that we do for your organization, but it's not part of ARC, if that makes sense. Are there any other questions? I'm just going to pull this up and then it's going to take me 1 second.
Not any questions that I see in the chat currently.
Okay. I'm gonna share my screen really quick. So when I work with clients personally, this is one of the dashboards that we create for them to share organizational data. So we look at organizational care, culture affirming care, social professional care, and emotional care. So we look at the organization. So if you kind of see that those 4 pillars at the top on the left. And then we look at individual interest, involvement, and DEI knowledge and skills. So we go to an individual level, and then we look at strengths and weaknesses in each of these categories. So this is an overall dashboard example of something that we use for some of my individual clients. Although this isn't a part of ARC per se, this is something that we can do for your organization, and we can talk about how to get there. Does that answer the question?
I think so. And I feel you on the being a data nerd. I love, my favorite part about data collection is the final results of the dashboard you just shared. Like, I love being able to see like the big picture of all the little pieces coming together. So definitely really appreciate you sharing that, Jessica.
Yeah,
Sorry.
well, the thing that I like about how we have designed this entire program is how everything just dovetails really, really well together. And so when I think about the previous question that was asked of me, I kind of look at it like I have that individual piece, but then I connect it over to Jessica, and she has that organizational piece where she helps organizations to kind of get that dashboard and kind of see where we are and all of that. And then all of that funnels up into, okay, now that we've done all of that at the individual level, we've done some dashboarding, if you will, at the organizational level, how can we then take that and impact it outwardly, impact it externally into the world beyond the walls of our organization? So that's like a big part of what this program is all about. And now that we're kind of at this point and we've talked about what we're doing, what I'd like to do now is hear from, it looks like we have 3 individuals. I'd really like to hear from the individuals, or maybe it's only 2. I see Donna Jackson twice. But I'd really like to hear from the individuals, like what was it that made you decide to come and sit in on this session with us today? Like what was that spark for you?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jackson. I was just interested to hear about exactly what this was. I mean, I've heard in the meetings that we've had on Mondays, but I wanted to get more in depth to get more information. But it does concern me with this DEI, with the president doing what he just did. So where does this whole piece sit with you, Dr. Tim Merritt? The DEI. I mean, to me, it kind of seems like he's totally, put DEI, on the back burner, which is definitely sending us back in the olden days, which to me is unnecessary. It's like instead of progressing, we're regressing. So that concerns me with your piece. So I'm not really sure, how much I will extend myself in this because of financial things of my organization. Because right now we're on a hard drive to build housing, and we have a project called Build 100. And a lot of my time has been focused, doing that and working with the Black Equity Coalition to basically understand the population in which I deal with today. So this whole DEI is a concern to me. Data is concerned to me, but sometimes the data that I've received, shouldn't be just for me to understand, but it should be for community at large to be able to articulate and understand what this data does for the everyday layperson.
So I completely agree with you. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I love data so much, because I think that it needs to be accessible to everybody. One of the things that oftentimes happens is when you get, how do I want to say this? Uh, Patricia Hill Collins, who's a Black feminist writer, one of the things that she often talked about was language being accessible to people, right? So it doesn't do us any good if we have PhDs and we're doing all these things, but we can't communicate what we're doing to everybody that needs to understand it. And so I agree with you on the data point. And I think that that's one of the important things that we do, even in ARC, and that I do in general, is make it accessible, right? Because people need to know why it's important. So even with what you're doing, how do we create the story that is accessible in language and, I would say, repetition for the people that need to understand it? It creates value in our work. It creates an understanding of why we're doing what we're doing. And I think that it allows us, honestly, to be able to pivot when things like this happen. One of the things you said is, like what people have framed as, I would say, an attack on DEI, which is what a lot of the pundits and articles and things are saying. And at the end of the day, one of the things that I'm focused on with care-based leadership and the tech company, Care Metrics that I work with, is honestly understanding that organizational culture needs to be understood, whether it's through a DEI lens, whether it's through an inclusion lens, whether it's through a participation lens. We need to understand what people are feeling and going through each day. And I'll put a period after that. We need to understand that businesses need to understand their organizational culture, not for DEI reasons, but basic productivity, right? Like your bottom line is impacted by what your clients experience, what your employees experience, and how dedicated they are to the organization. At the end of the day, those are valuable data points that people need. The idea that DEI is bad or good, or putting a sense of morality on it, I think is sometimes distracting to what we really need to understand. And that's the experience that everybody is having in the spaces that they occupy every single day. And I think that's what we really want to impact, right? We want to build spaces where everybody can thrive, where everybody can feel welcome and they have the best opportunity for success. And I think if we focus on that, then that will transcend any administration that comes in, because everybody has their priorities, right? Every 4 years, we have a new administration with new priorities. And at the end of the day, if we want people and organizations and businesses, small and large, to be successful, if we focus on that, then that'll transcend any changes that we have.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, first of all, I thank you, Donna, for even asking that question. And it's definitely a question that is very huge right now. And I also agree with everything that Jessica is saying. So when I look at my own sort of career and evolution when it comes to diversity and equity and all of that, I can go back. I spent a number of years working in the pharmaceutical industry. So it was about 25 years or so. And half of that time, I was a research scientist working in a laboratory environment. And then midway through my career, I made like a huge change. And I shifted from being a research scientist into being a learning and development professional, which meant now my job or my career now is about helping people to learn and how do people navigate within their organizational spaces. And one of the things that I was very fortunate actually to be on the front end of the company when it decided that it wanted to start to move in the direction of acknowledging the need for diversity, acknowledging the need for inclusion. So if you think back like 20 years, that started off with the affinity groups within organizations. So in the organization that I was with, the African American Affinity Group was the very first one that got established. And I was able to be a part of that pioneering work in the beginning. And then over the course of time, everything evolves. And then finally, when I found myself in the position of now I'm a learning and development professional, and my job is to make sure that the individuals who are in the R&D organization, the scientific community, have the tools and the necessary resources that they need in order to be able to develop. Right. So, but because I was in the African American Affinity Group, because I was able to see the metrics as Jessica was just speaking to, I knew that there were certain problems within the organization, and I decided there were certain things that I could potentially do to remedy some of those issues. And so one of the things that that became apparent to me very early on when I moved into the new role is that the Asian population was crying out for English language development. Nobody was hearing that. But because I found myself sort of in this crosswords position, if you will, where on the one hand, I understand the statistics. And when I look at the statistics, I could see that while we have a significant portion of individuals who are in the Asian community, they're kind of stuck in a certain place. And so when I looked at their numbers in terms of their presence versus their promotion rates, as an example, the promotion rates were dismal. And one of the reasons why was because of the communication issue. So you have people who speak Mandarin, as an example. The language of Mandarin is so incredibly different from the language of English. And these individuals were really struggling with that piece of it. And so that was the very first program that I implemented, was an English language development program, not specifically for the Asian population, but for all populations where English was not their first language. And what's interesting to me is the first time when I presented this, if you will, to my leadership, I was presenting it to the senior VP at the time of the R&D organization. And he looked me dead in my eyes and asked me, what in the world do we need English language development for? But because I knew the metrics behind the scenes, I was able to tell him exactly, this is the reason why we need this, right? And I've had email after email after email after email of people in that community asking for English language development. So I was able to get the program implemented. And I think the whole entire reason why I'm sharing this is to demonstrate how important it is. Everything that Jessica just said around understanding your organization, what does the culture look like, is really, really important. And what I just did was give you a real life example of why and how it's important, but how you can take the right steps in order to remedy that situation once you're aware that that situation exists.
If you don't mind, I'll also just jump in. I know it's just the two of us here, but I'm really here kind of on behalf of Dress for Success Pittsburgh, the organization I work for. We know that we're interested, and I was kind of tasked with learning more about the program, and also, but really seeing, who among us would be best suited to represent us, because I think that we've done, at least in the time that I've been with the organization, which is not particularly long, three or so years, we've certainly taken steps to educate ourselves, but they've been, in my opinion, kind of a little on the surface level. So this is an opportunity, I think, to dig a little deeper, and I think, and I appreciate that as an organization we are, kind of planning to put our money where our mouths are. Don't like that phrase, but so yeah, I mean, I'm personally, I'm excited about this. I'm not sure that I will be the one involved, but regardless, I have a lot to take back to my team.
I appreciate the mention around, like, kind of when it comes to phrases like DEI and, anti-racism, there's like, Bridget, you mentioned surface level stuff. So it's like, it never seems to go deeper into the bigger picture of what that needs to capture. And then just to commend Donna for bringing up, I know there's a lot of tiptoeing around the current administration and what's going on, but the Forbes Funds is championing spaces for this, these crucial conversations, because it's what we're hearing from the sector, and we're trying to reflect and hold space for that. So it's while it's being dismantled in whatever way, again, under whatever current administration, it's important to hold these spaces open, because from a human-centered design level, like, this is what, especially working in nonprofits and being in the nonprofit sector across the ecosystem, like, it's the core of our work is people. So when you plug that into the bigger picture, like, it's just like DEI, anti-racism, like it's a critical component to the work that we're doing. So trying to, again, carve out those spaces to make sure that these conversations are being held, continue to be held. And I mean, I echo kind of what Donna was saying. Like, I don't want to see a sort of regression when it comes to things like this, just because of, executive orders, et cetera. But I went through ARC 2.0 and kind of helped facilitate that, and then sat through that first iteration. And it's really humbling to sit through and hear experiences that you'll never go through because of, a litany of things. So it's just on an eye-opening level, I think is more crucial now more than ever, to keep these conversations open, and carve out these places to have safe conversations around racism and kind of how we move forward. Again, it's Anita brought up the George Floyd stuff in 2020. It just seems kind of like sometimes things like that just happen and get swept under the rug, and we all move on as a society. And it's just like it moves so quickly sometimes that it just gets like, again, pushed past, whatever headlines next in the news. So I just think with ARC 3.0, we're just trying to continue to hold space again for these crucial conversations and really champion for what we're hearing in the community calls on Monday, what we're hearing in the GPMP public policy side of things, just to make sure again that we're moving forward and not backward in moments like this. And I know we only have a couple more minutes, 12 minutes left. Again, Rebecca regrettably was not able to join us this morning. She was ill and wanted to give her space to take care of herself. But in tandem to the incubator sessions and the data series with Jessica, throughout the cohort, there will be a reading discussion series. So we'll pull some articles and there'll be a book assigned to the cohort throughout the 20 weeks. And the broad objective is to have collective growth throughout through a dialogue. So Rebecca just wanted to highlight that our interactive reading discussions offer a powerful space to engage in meaningful conversations and foster actionable change. These are designed to complement the anti-racism incubator content, and this series invites ARC 3.0 cohort members to join a transformative journey toward justice and equity. So throughout the cohort, again, for the reading discussion series, participants will deepen their understanding, foster collaboration, and enhance impact when it comes to, again, being anti-racist and what that means. So just wanted to, again, and echo that in tandem with the three-part triangle of what ARC is, the data side, the incubator side, and the reading series discussion. So
I would just like to end my own comments with kind of connecting back to what you just said, Bree, and describing the Forbes Fund, why and how you do what you do. And one of the things that I absolutely love that really connected me to you, that made me say yes when I was invited to participate, is this idea of human-centered design. Because when I think about what's happening in a larger context, it's kind of like this money centered or this economic centered design. Like all of these conversations, so many of them are focused on the economy. We think about, the election, it seemed like the economy was the big thing, but the fact of the matter is the economy doesn't thrive if humanity doesn't thrive. So I always kind of look at that as kind of this, a little bit of a contradiction when people look at it as if one is absent from the other, or it's like a one versus the other. It's not. It's like we are the ones who help to make a kind of economy that can thrive, whether we're doing it at a personal level. What does my personal economy look like? Or, at an organizational or a community level. At the center of it all is who we are as human beings. And when we try to break from that, we kind of get what we're looking at right now, because it feels disjointed to me. It feels like we're in this space of disconnection and everything, because we're trying to kind of push the human-centered aspect of it under the rug, but the human-centered aspect is really the core. And that's why I look at things starting at that individual level and then kind of filtering out from there. So I just wanted to just acknowledge that I think that is such an important and key component of what we do in combination, in collaboration, is that it is focused on human-centered design. And then lastly, Bridget, I just want to tell you, I love Just for Success. I've volunteered with them in the past and everything. They've helped me at a certain point in my life. So yeah, I'm glad to see you here.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Anita.
And I know this is silly. I don't, part of my job at the Forbes Funds is social media side of things. So this is something so silly, but the TikTok ban happened, and a lot of folks are trickling over into this app called Red Note, and seeing the whole world come together to be on a different platform and with open arms. I know Anita touched base on kind of the Asian culture community side of things, but seeing the world at large kind of adapt and evolve into learning more about an entire culture from a social media standpoint has been so cool. Obviously, the circumstances kind of a bummer, but I think this really opens up to when it comes to innovative solutions around being anti-racist, like there's no glass ceiling, whether it's again from a smaller kind of chunked out learning cohort to a broader social media platform. I just think there's a lot more that we can do, and I just think it's cool the creative ways that again, based off the circumstances, crummy, but I think it's really creative and innovative, the things that people are doing kind of behind the scenes to be able to still come together as a whole collective and kind of learn more about each other and their cultures and things like that. So I know it's when you hear TikTok, it's a silly thing, but I think it's really cool what's happening again with the transition from folks moving onto the new platform. So. But alrighty, I don't see any more questions in the chat. I really appreciate kind of the open engagement and the conversational component of today. I really hate like an info session where it just feels like people are being talked at. So I want to applaud Anita and Jessica for kind of opening up to a conversational aspect and not just kind of a here are the facts and all the, you know, the important things, but also kind of the boring, monotonous things that we have to check mark when we go through these. And appreciate Donna and Bridget and kind of your engagement throughout this. I did drop the outreach packet into the chat earlier. I'll drop it again, but it has, it will eventually have the recording to the session on it. So you'll be able to go back and reference it or share it out with colleagues or other people in your network. And then it also has, again, the outreach packet that kind of everything we walk through the presentation, the pricing. There's a frequently asked questions page in there, and just really high level overviews, kind of the what ARC 3.0 is, and some of the objectives and kind of like common core principles. So there, again, I will share the link in the chat again. Please feel free to share it out broadly. The cohort will probably launch late February. Anita and I were highlighting the fact that earlier in the green room before the call, how cool to kind of launch something like this during Black History Month. So again, late February, there all throughout the link for the outreach packet, there is a registration form to a Google form. If you are interested or your organization is interested, please fill that out, and either me or Dr. Hannah on the Forbes Funds team will get back to you and kind of talk more details behind the scenes about getting payment settled in place, and we'll get the hard launch date of the cohort out to you. There are I believe 2 or 3 scholarships for the cohort. So if that is something that cost is at the Forbes Funds, we want to make sure it's not a barrier to anybody. So if that is something you'd be interested in, please reach out and let us know. Again, I will share the link to the packet in the chat again, and also my contact information if you have any other questions.
Thanks everybody for coming. I know I put my email address in the chat and so did Anita. So if you all want to reach out, please feel free. We'll be happy to connect with any of you.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate the fact that you all were here.